and welcome to the third episode of the Corner 3 Show. My name's Alex.
My name's Ross.
My name's Zach.
And it's been quite an interesting week for the Indiana Pacers. Two good wins against the Magic and the Cavaliers, as we talked about earlier this week. But things have changed, guys. Injuries, obviously, and two tough losses. What do you guys think?
First one impressive win, though, sandwiched in between those two tough losses. Kind of expected the Warriors game to be a loss, especially with the injuries that you mentioned. I don't know, do you want to talk about the Suns and the Thunder, or just overall first?
I think let's talk a little bit. Let's go game by game a little bit. Suns, bad loss from the get-go. No real reason for that. Even with PG out, Suns are at the bottom of the West. We knew going into that game, as we talked about in another podcast, that Booker and Warren are going to be their guys. And we just let them have whatever we want. And we had one of the worst games as far as shooting the ball I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. You know, when you're watching that game, there was no flow. Everybody just got out of sorts. I don't know if that was injuries, if that was everybody just being worn out from the week. I don't know what was going on, but it was an ugly game all around. It's a game we should have won.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Brandon Knight leads them with 17 points. Miles Turner has I'd say a little bit of a bounce-back game, as we kind of called on the pod, but still, those are games you have to win, especially looking at a weekend of a back-to-back with the Thunder and the Warriors. You can't let that game go.
Yeah, I have nothing else to say about the Suns game. Second to worst team in the Western Conference. That should have been a W.
Yeah. I mean, I think they only shot 5 or 6 threes that game and made 1 or 2. I mean, that's just unbelievable in the modern era of the NBA basketball.
I think we're in the 80s again, yeah.
Yeah, but then that kind of changes against the Thunder. A huge win for the team, especially with everyone who was injured going into that game. Glenn Robinson had some really good minutes, a 115-111 game in overtime. What do you guys think about a really good win, knowing that we had to come back here to play the Warriors on Monday?
I was excited Jeff Teague showed up. It was the first game you saw what we traded for. And, that's exciting. I mean, George Hill could do some things, but Jeff Teague, when he drives to the lane, you see it. He's looking for guys. He'll go up in the air, act like he's laying it up, and all of a sudden he's dishing it off somebody. He's out there to make the play, make the assist, and he can score on his own too. With George Hill, you always had to worry that he wasn't out there trying to get his own shot at times. And then, when he was forced to, he could do it. But he's a combo guard. He wasn't a playmaker. And it's good to see if Jeff Teague can keep this going, we actually have a playmaker now at the point guard position.
I think the key player from the game was definitely Jeff Teague. I wrote down the stats. Westbrook had 31 points. Teague had 30. Teague, though, shot 9 of 16 from the floor, 56%. That's fantastic. Westbrook was 13 of 34 from the floor, 18 more shots than Teague. Teague was much more efficient than Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook did have 15 assists, 11 rebounds, triple-double. He had to do that for his team, though. But Teague was efficient, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, all over. A great game from him.
And I think what Zach said earlier is true. With George Hill, every night it was either is he going to show up the aggressive IUPUI George Hill, or is he going to be the very passive George Hill who stay in the corner? But with Jeff Teague, you get the same Jeff Teague every night. And although that Jeff Teague hasn't been efficient or as active as we wanted him to be, I mean, throughout that game, even the second quarter, I felt like he had 20 and 10 assists. But he just controlled Westbrook. He kept him from getting what he wanted, and Westbrook was pissed the whole game.
He made him work for it.
He was griping at officials, but Teague just played his game, and that's a game last night that George Hill could not have had, as far as not only matching Westbrook on the defensive end, holding him, especially those first 3 quarters, but then attacking him on every possession. That was a joy to see, and it was nice to see guys like Glenn step up when needed. I mean, that was a tough game. That was a really tough game. When they went to overtime, I was not very confident, but that was a huge win for them.
Yeah, they always talk about making the opposing best player work at both ends, because he's going to get his points, but make him work on defense. And Teague made Westbrook do that. I mean, you saw with his difference in percentages on the floor. And you mentioned Glenn Robinson. That was his first start of the year, his first career double-double. I think getting him more minutes, getting him more experience in playing time, he's a work in progress, but I was impressed. I was happy with what I saw on the floor there.
And it was, he needs, like you said, he needs more experience. Glenn Robinson, though, he's like one of those guys who has the potential if he just keeps working at it, grinding. If he actually went in there at 4:30 in the morning every day like Joe Young did, like that dude could probably be crazy good, No,
I mean, you have to think, too, at Michigan, he was a power forward / center. I mean, he honestly was not a 3. And I was texting Joey Burton, who is his trainer as well as George Niang's trainer, the day after, just talking about, how well Glenn played. And I mean, it's just all about getting minutes. And what Glenn does, rather than some of our other players, is he's a complementary player. So for a guy like Paul George, Glenn Robinson is perfect because he doesn't have to make sure to pass him the ball. Glenn's going to pass Paul the ball, but he's going to rebound. He's going to be open for wide shots, and he's improved his three-point shooting as we saw in the preseason, and we're starting to see now. He's going to have some effort, as we saw. His eye was wide shut.
Yeah, did you see that?
Against the Warriors. I mean, he had to shoot without his dominant eye, which is almost impossible. So Glenn could be a huge, huge piece going forward, especially if he can find a way into the rotation.
Yep, I agree.
All right. And then what comes with a late night win, against the Thunder, traveling back to Indy to play the Warriors, who had been here since Saturday night. So they had made themselves comfortable, and we were just depleted. Miles couldn't play after he injured his ankle on Sunday night. So a 37-point loss on Monday. I'm not even going to get that mad about it. I don't think you can. It was just an extremely tough situation for the Pacers. And looking at that schedule from the beginning of the season, that's the toughest back-to-back in the NBA.
Kind of felt it was going to be a loss going into, especially when PG, CJ, and Turner are all out. So 3 of your top 4 scores, 3 of your top 5 scores. You didn't have the firepower. Yeah, but I'm not disappointed, like you said, in the loss. I mean, kind of felt it was going to happen. Get it out of the way. Let's move on.
Yeah. Well, when you have to call up your D-League players to step in and play some minutes, then that's when your bench is kind of depleted. And so I think every Pacers fan going into that game, even if you bought a ticket that night, you were kind of like, I think we're going to lose this one.
You were there to see the Warriors, which is...
Well, I mean, I think there are some positives, though. I think Stuckey, 21 points, 7 of 12 from the field. That's a big plus, especially considering this is his first time playing in almost a month. Well, second or third game playing in just over a month. There's so many pieces that are starting to make sense on this team. We're seeing Teague start to really find his place. We're starting to see Stuckey and Miles is kind of reemerging again after his strong opening game. I think now if we can just get some guys healthy, get some consistency, December's going to be a tough month going forward, but I think, the East is everyone's beating themselves up. Pacers are 7 and 8 and 7th in the East right now. Everyone's beating each other up right now. Even the Sixers have four wins under the belt. So I think if this team just builds some consistency, I think the rest of the league is starting to see some positives for this team.
Yeah. Eastern Conference.
Thank you, Eastern Conference. It's like
I know. We'll take it though. We'll take it. So let's go a little bit higher level here. Seraphin is starting to kind of build his niche on this team, even though he didn't play Sunday, he played last night. I think the coaching staff is finally realizing that he has to play every night somehow, even with injuries, maybe allowing him to play. I think once we see a healthy Pacers team, I think he's going to be a standard player in this rotation.
Yeah, I may have missed it. I don't think there were any smothered chickens the last couple games, but he's just an energy guy. I hope he gets more minutes, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's getting less than 10 minutes a game. I think Al Jefferson's getting almost 15. But it gets to the point where it's like, Al Jefferson, great offensive player, but he's limited defensively. Very slow. Very slow. Seraphin, he comes out there, he gives you energy. He can score a little bit, play a little bit of defense. It's a nice thing to have. You have Seraphin and Jefferson back there to help you up, especially when there's times where, Miles might be struggling. Lavoy Allen not catching balls or making shots. He's throwing balls off the backboard. He's shooting, but it's really an assist for Thad Young. But it's a good thing. I'd love to see Kevin Seraphin get more minutes. I always thought when he was in New York and overseas that he was a good player. I was surprised they actually let him go last year. So when we signed him, it's like that's a big man who I think has potential if you just give him the minutes.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we can't experiment with him at the 4. We talked last week. He's only 6'9". I know he's a huge body. I mean, he's one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen. But the fact that we can experiment a little bit with him at the 4 is a little bit concerning. I don't know if that's just we're concerned about we actually think Lavoy is that good, or we don't think Kevin can play at the 4. Either way, it's pretty interesting. We talked a little bit about Teague earlier, though, finally finding his own niche on the team. I think Brooks is as well. We haven't really talked about him much at all this season, but I think he's hit that bailout top of the key 3 at least 5 or 6 times this season. he's a veteran. I mean, he's killed us before. He's a great addition to the team.
Good shooter. Yeah. The bench guys, it seems like it's coming together. I mean, the record didn't really show it. That I feel like the team's turning a corner
Slowly.
We'll move on. We'll see.
Yeah, if we were healthy
Just keep it
this
consistent.
past weekend, it might have been a different story. But to go back to Seraphim real quickly, another thing I was talking to Joey Burton about was Glenn Robinson, and to a point maybe later in the season, George Niang. They can be the Kevin Seraphins of the wings as far as they just bring energy, and when they go into the game, things change. If those two guys can add that to a team where it's a lot of guys who just need the ball and it's not, necessarily the most, pass-friendly team, that could be huge, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, PG, Teague, Monte, they need the ball in their hands. They need shots. And these guys, if they just play energy minutes, get the ball to them, to the big players, that'll be very valuable for the Pacers.
And we also have a section here inside Larry's head. And I think I tweeted earlier earlier this month that I think Larry knew before the season that there was a trade to be made. And I think some of this early season struggles have maybe moved up that trade. I think, or that move, whatever it may be. I don't think this team can exist and make a run in the playoffs with all of the guards that we have, the small guards that we have, especially with the lack of shooting. I mean, we have a serious lack of shooting on
Got a lot of slashes. We've talked about it before. Stuckey, Teague, Ellis are all similar vein of type player. They like to cut to the rim, need some kind of shooting and some defense to help out.
Yeah, but who would you rather move?
Right. I don't know.
Ellis.
Yeah, well, I think everybody
we've talked about that.
Yeah. You'd want Ellis, but then it's like, well, who wants Ellis? Other guys might want, teams might want Stuckey.
I agree.
The team that I've kind of been thinking about, the Dallas Mavericks, no Monte Ellis. Dirk likes playing with Monte Ellis. And Wesley Matthews is a guy who has been horrible since they signed him to that huge deal. I mean, he's been horrible.
So horrible for horrible trade?
Well, take the player you're more familiar with, and Monte was successful in Dallas. He didn't have a bad year in any terms, but Wesley Matthews is struggling, and they're a team at the bottom of the West. I mean, the bottom, the worst team in the West. Yeah. So, I mean,
I've not thought about that before, and
it's an interesting thought. I think I might have saw just Wesley interesting in a trade, but I don't think people think about Monte going back to Dallas. He's on a pretty good contract considering the CBA. I'd take Wesley Matthews.
I'd love to have a 3-and-D guy. Yeah, that'd be nice to have.
Yeah,
shooting would be nice.
Yeah, but they got to accept that. They might say, "Oh, we want Stuckey."
It's not a 2K trade. Our Paul George poster is going down.
He's injured, so he's
that's not a sign. He's coming back. We promise. We promise. All right, let's look ahead to this week. We've got the Hawks. We promise that's not a sign to come. For those listening on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play,
resting.
Our Paul George poster fell down, but he's just resting. His ankle's going to be fine. Don't worry, Pacers fans. He'll hopefully be here for many years to come.
Will be.
Let's talk about Wednesday. The Hawks, a really good, really well-coached team and a strong contender in the East. Millsap, Howard, Schroeder, Korver. I think Jeff Teague probably wants some revenge here. What do you guys think?
For sure. The Hawks always seem to be that team. They're always good, but you don't think about them. They're second in the East right now. Again, I mean, it'll be an interesting game for sure. Millsap's still there, and now they have Howard. I was looking up new players. They didn't really add anybody new. It's just besides Dwight Howard, and Schroeder's the non-shooting version of Jeff Teague, but more defense. So it'll be an interesting game. I feel like that's a win for the Pacers if they play it right.
I take it.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm always skeptical when you go into a team like this who has two good big men in Howard and Millsap, and then you got a guy in the corner who can drain threes, Korver.
That's true.
And then, Schroeder, he's a drive and dish guy. Yeah. And what's been the issue with the Pacers? Over pursuing with guys going to the lane, and what happens, they dish it out to a corner three, and they got Bazemore and Korver out there that do that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see him win. I think we can win, but this style of play is what we've been struggling with all year.
That's true. I mean, also, we struggle rebounding the ball, and they've got two of the best rebounders in the NBA there. And that does not bode well for a team that first of all, might be without Miles again. We have no idea. We know that Paul George is closer to coming back than CJ, and we know that Serafin is most likely to go considering he played Monday
Teague's
night.
ankle and Turner's ankle is not that big of a deal, is what they said, right?
Well, yeah, but Miles didn't play, but Teague could have played Monday. He just decided.
Yeah, so I'll preface
to
my
get in the
statement
score.
with, if everybody's healthy and back, then that's a W. But if we're still missing everybody like we probably will, I don't know. Hopefully it's more like the Thunder game than it was the Suns game.
I mean, look at this stretch here. We're going to talk about the Nets and Clippers shortly, but this is a stretch where they could make some moves here, especially with everyone, as we talked about earlier, battling each other out in the East. These are 3 games, very winnable games. We played the Clippers pretty well at home in the past, and I don't know. I have some optimism here, especially if we can get Paul back at least by Brooklyn. I mean, we might actually sit him out again.
I think it'd be better to sit him and play him for the
I
Clippers.
would like to see some progress as far as now we've got some guys hitting their stride. Let's try to get our whole team together rather than Jeff Teague's playing really well, Stuckey's really playing well, and then you have to throw in 2 guys who need the ball, and Miles and George, and throw everything off. So who are we taking here? Ross, go first.
Brooklyn first? We talking
No,
about
you
Brooklyn
taking
first?
the Hawks first?
Well,
Taking the Hawks?
You guys are trying to make me
taking
change
the
my mind.
Pacers.
I'll take the Pacers. I'll be the fair weather guy.
Zach?
Just because of injuries, and you don't know who's coming back for that first game, I'll probably say the Hawks will have that one.
I've got the Pacers in a close one. I think they're still going to be pretty tired. I mean, considering all the minutes that a guy like Teague and Robinson has had to play, Thad Young has had to play a ton of minutes. So I'll take the Pacers, but I think it'll be a close one. On Friday, we've got the Brooklyn Nets 4-9 at home.
You going to that game?
I think I am going to go to the
yeah.
game, cheer on Park Tudor alum Yogi Ferrell. But I think they're 4-10 actually, but they're a lot more competitive than teams have thought going into this season. They've got some interesting pieces, guys who don't really care about their minutes. I mean, they do care about their minutes, but they're just trying to go out and earn their minutes. So they're going to chuck up shots. They're going to play with a lot of confidence because they have to, because they're worried about getting cut. Because if you look at this team, other than a few players, this team could be completely different next year. You could have 2 players return. So this is a team that everyone has to be weary of because of that fact. They're playing they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, their star and Lopez, we all know. They added Scola, former Pacer, Jeremy Lin, who's actually injured.
He's been out for a while now.
They need him back. But in the meantime, Yogi Ferrell. I thought they'd be down there with the 76ers battling for last place in the NBA. Yeah. But they've been surprisingly better than I thought they would be. And it's not just Lopez. Everybody's been stepping up.
Well, I mean, if we're going to make our picks, this is the game I will take the Pacers, because I think the Pacers are going to want revenge from the loss earlier this year. Yeah. A game
they're not going to lose twice to the Nets.
Clearly should have won. It was an early game. I think they're going to want revenge for that. No Jeremy Lin. And it's a home game. We're going to get guys back from injury. I feel like the Pacers are going to win. Especially when you look at their team. I mean, their 4th and 5th leading scorers are Trevor Booker and Sean Kilpatrick.
Kilpatrick, Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
He's actually a tough little player. But
he's a good player, but it's like that's a guy that's like your 7th or 8th man coming off the bench.
But that's the thing, though. I think the Pacers have a really tough time getting up for teams, and it's a really bad thing to have as an NBA team. Is they don't get up for teams that aren't very good. They don't have a star player. They overlook them. We get up for the Cavs. We get up for the Thunder, even if we have only a few guys on healthy. But yet, the Suns beat us at home. The Nets kill us. I mean, it's embarrassing to lose those types of games. That's why we're not 4th or 3rd in the East, because we've won some big games. I mean, that OKC game, that's a signature win just like it was last year coming off the All-Star break. But to not get up for these games that can just inch us up away from the Milwaukees, get us closer to the Atlantas, the Torontos of the East, it's huge for us.
I mean, not to get off subject, but what do you think that is? Is that coaching? Is that guys' immaturity?
No.
Is that...
I mean, I think they got their horn tooted a little bit this preseason, and I think that's kind of been the culture of this team. David West, we don't have a David West on this team. Mm-hmm. We don't have that type of guy who's just going to keep everyone grounded. But this team got a lot of hype as far as could the Pacers be a contender in the East against Cleveland? All that talk during preseason, we had a really smooth preseason, then you hit a little bit of adversity, and then everyone
Freaks
has,
out.
has an identity crisis where it's like, well, who are we? What are we? We're losing to Brooklyn. We're losing to the Suns. What are we doing? And then you go out and beat the OKC Thunder at OKC, and you're like, oh, well, maybe everything's okay, and you get kind of complacent. I mean, it's coaching, it's players, it's a little bit of a culture issue, but it's one of those things that can be worked out, I think.
If 2 games went the other way, if we had 2 or 3 more wins, we're second in the East right now. I mean, it's early.
Still super early.
Super
Again,
early.
It's November.
Brand new team, like
Yeah.
you said. I'm not going to chalk it up to coaching yet. If this is happening in February, then we have something to talk about.
I mean, it happened, 2 years ago, the year we started off 16-0. We had that stretch after the All-Star break where we just were. Well, what happened first is we started beating teams.
year. Was that the
What?
Was that the GQ year when they were all dressed up?
Yeah.
I think that was the everything year.
Yeah,
That was
a terrible
everything
year.
But what happened was we started to beat bad teams by fewer and fewer points, and then it started turning into losses. We didn't really rally until the end of the year. So it happens on every team. I'm not too concerned. I think it's a thing that can be solved, as I said earlier. But a game against Brooklyn is a game that we should definitely win. Hopefully Yogi plays well. I'm sure he'll have a ton in the crowd, a ton of Hoosier fans.
I bet so.
He's got a cult following. I can tell you that. Starting in high school. In high school, we would drive from Indianapolis to LaPel, and we would have like a caravan of 6 just Hoosier fans following us, something out of the movie Hoosiers.
Nice.
It was pretty cool, but also a little weird.
So we all take the Pacers to beat Brooklyn at least. That's
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
All right, let's talk Clippers. Best team in the NBA, I'd say right now. Best record, consistent, bench. Yeah, they just look solid. They've never been able to figure out that 3 spot, but I don't think it really matters right now, especially with the depth they're playing with and everyone's playing well. JJ Redick is shooting 49% from 3.
Who is their starting 3 right now?
Umba Munte.
Oh,
Still from
nice.
Luke Umba Munte.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, I looked them up. The only new addition that I'd recognize name-wise is Brandon Bass. So it's the same team we've seen year after
He's a
year
solid
that they
pick.
talk about replacing or trading guys out. This may be the last go-round. I mean, they say that every year for the Celtics.
I think
Clippers,
this year is it, though.
But they look good. I mean,
Yeah.
Blake looks motivated as long as he doesn't punch a trainer in the face or
I think it might
anything
get
like
more
that.
motivated. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, it probably is their last year. Chris Paul's getting up there. Obviously, Paul Pierce is going to retire after this year.
Yeah, he's done. He's not
Yeah.
really doing much from anyone.
Coming off the bench for him.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he's only played in 2 games.
Yeah. He's been injured, I think, too.
I think this after the owner, he's super into the team.
Ballmer,
Super,
yeah.
he's all over the place. And I think if they don't do something this year, I can see them going for some big time trade. Maybe bringing in another superstar to maybe complement somebody because obviously you only get so many chances with the time you have with your roster, and you got to make a move while you can.
CP3's been in conversation on the MVP watch I've been reading. So
Maybe.
I haven't gotten to watch any of his games, but that's
Yeah.
that'll be
I've
a
been
deciding
listening
factor.
to JJ Redick's podcast on the Vertical for the past few months, and from everything he said and everyone he's interviewed Chris Paul, Crawford, Griffin, but from everything I've heard, I mean, they're as into the season as they've ever
dialed
been.
in.
They're as committed to the season as they've ever been. They know it's a bang or bust for the Clippers. So it's gonna be a tough game for the Pacers. Looking at matchups. Chris Paul against Jeff Teague, that's a really tough matchup. Thad Young, Griffin, we'll see. Thad's got that athleticism. He's just got to keep his head into it. We kind of talked in our group text about Thad's off-ball defense. If you watch Thaddeus Young, he just ball watches. So when I say ball watch, I mean wherever the ball is on the court, he's just staring at the ball. So his man could backdoor him, could cut, could screen.
Watch for
and he
Redick
has
to get a lot of
no
that stuff,
idea.
yeah.
He'll be watching Blake Griffin do an alley-oop behind him.
Yeah, so I'm really scared
Oh,
about
geez.
that as a matchup. But if Paul George is back, there's no one on that team who can match up Paul George. And every year he kills them because there's no one on that team who can match up with him. Crawford's not going to guard him. Redick's may take a crack. Redick's actually a decent defender. People don't give him enough credit. But
He's giving up a lot of inches there.
yeah, it's a matter of shutting down that pick and roll as best as possible, clogging the lane, but keeping Redick from those open corner threes.
So what's everybody's pick?
I'm going to take Clippers. I don't think the Pacers are going to have it.
I'm going to go with the Pacers over the Clippers.
I got Pacers too. I think this is a 3-0 week for the Pacers. I think they figure
I'm
some
the
stuff out.
pessimist,
Guys
okay,
on a
alright.
roll, injuries, guys get healthy.
I just feel like this team gets themselves hyped and up for these big games.
They do.
Kind of like, the Thunder game. I feel like they want to show everybody that, we're not no scrubs. We can play.
Yeah, and throw at that Warriors game as well. They didn't have a chance from the time that game went into overtime in the Thunder. I was talking to Quinn Buckner the other day, or just yesterday, and before the game I said that they lost tonight's game most likely as soon as that game went to overtime because guys' legs are just going to be way too heavy. I mean, so just throw out that Warriors game, and I think they're going to get up for a strong Clippers opponent. All right, so let's talk a little bit general NBA stuff. Minnesota Timberwolves, not off to the start that we expected, but Andrew Wiggins has kind of emerged as their best, not their best player, but maybe as their crunch time guy. Because I saw a Karl Anthony Towns vine where he between the legs, step back, pump fake.
You see the pump fake, and he ripped it on who was that now?
Joel Embiid.
Oh yeah.
But the Timberwolves are a really interesting team, I think, because Tibbs has his handprints all over that team now, but can they find the player down the stretch to make the plays to win the game? Because a lot of people pick them as a 7 or 8 seed, and right now it's going to take some work for them to get there, although it's early. What do you guys think about the young and very talented Timberwolves team?
I think that's the key because right now Levine is taking their crunch time shots, their end of game shots, and it needs to be Wiggins or Towns. And those two guys are still too immature, still learning their games to take it from Levine and to be that guy. But Wiggins, the last couple games last week I think had 40 a couple times, and his three is coming around, and we already know he's an athletic freak. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. You look at the roster and that you're like, dang, that's like you see how these guys play 1 or 2 years in college, and you're like, man, these guys were awesome in college. You got
great
Wisdom,
2K team, yeah.
It's 2K. Towns, Chris Dunn. I mean, even Tyus Jones, Adrian Payne. All these guys, you're like, man, these guys were awesome in college.
Household names in college.
Yeah.
Already, yeah.
I mean, Wiggins is averaging almost 25 a game. He's shooting like 44% from the three-point line, which you wouldn't expect from Andrew Wiggins, but obviously he's tried to develop it. He was like the guy I wish, obviously the Cavs won a title with Kevin Love, but he was the guy I wish the Cavs would have kept. Could you imagine Wiggins with learning under LeBron and
with LeBron at the 4? That could have been something else.
Yeah,
they did win a title with what they got, but yeah, it
still
set him up for a future. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because, getting tutored under LeBron, learning how his workout routine, how he does everything, and then you see what he does every day going to the gym. Plus, Wiggins would probably end up, I could see LeBron telling him to bulk up a little bit and start sharing some of the load. And I still think he's on a bad – they're not playing great right now, but I still think he can be a monster.
They talked before he was drafted. I remember they always, who's the next Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. I remember them talking about Wiggins being the next that kind of a guy. It's taken him longer, I think, to get to that kind of
and I mean,
level. But
he's been on a bad team in a small market, and for some reason, coming out of high school, he had all the hype in the world, and then at Kansas, the hype was still there, but a lot of people were talking about is Jabari the number 1 pick, and everyone knew Jabari coming out of college would probably be the more impactful player because he's just got the body and got the shot overall, make an impact. But obviously, Wiggins has the potential still. I mean, he's only, I think, 21, 22 years old at most. I mean, to just be a huge multi-all-star type of guy, an MVP candidate in a couple of years, especially with Thibodeau. I mean, he could be the best two-way player in a year or two. Not to challenge, because I think he's more offensively talented than Kawhi. He's just got some talent over there.
I agree.
All right, so another guy who's really shaked up the league is DeMar DeRozan. Leads the league in scoring. Just a beast so far. And for a guy who doesn't really shoot the 3 well, for a guy who really just relies on getting to the rim and getting fouled, he's just been a menace against every team he's played. And the Raptors have looked really strong thus far.
DeRozan. Everyone always compares DeRozan to PG. I feel like I think they're a draft apart or a year apart. That the same kind of. I don't get it either. I don't agree with it. Yeah, a player who doesn't shoot threes, but he's leading the league in scoring. His USA.
Old school.
Did his USA this last year?
Now, Simmons talks about the USA effect because the year after Harden came after the London Olympics, the first year on the Rockets, he obviously has confidence, and Lowry's setting it up well, and for some reason, it happens every year, but for some reason in the NBA, a team that makes it to the Eastern Conference Finals or a team that makes it to the Western Conference Finals, no matter even if they didn't lose anybody, they still get downgraded to a 4th or 5th seed. That's what happens every year with the Hawks.
Yeah.
Every year they come back strong. This is what happened with the Raptors. Everyone was talking about Boston or Indiana as the team to take the 2 and the 3 seed. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was like, oh, the Raptors, they weren't really that good. And, they added Jared Sullinger, so did they really get any better? And it's like, well, they actually were the second best team in the NBA last year, and they did challenge Cleveland in some areas. They lost Biyombo, but still, this is a really good team with 2 All-Stars.
Is he going to be able to maintain this? We're going to be talking about this at the end of the season?
I mean, I think the way he's playing leads me to believe he's going to have a strong year. He's not going to keep up 34 points
I don't
per
think
game.
he'll be scoring champion, but he'll
But
be in
still,
there.
I think obviously he's found an area where he just can attack guys, and they don't know how to handle him when he goes off the dribble.
Yeah, I pulled up his stats. The last 2 games, he scored 25 and 12. So maybe he's already coming down from the peak. But
Yeah, I don't want to hammer the guy too much. I mean, he's had such a strong start, but I think he's a stud.
yeah, agreed.
We've kind of talked about a potential trade with Wesley Matthews, but
I like that one. Let's do it,
I
Larry.
love that one. So Larry and whoever the Dallas GM is, well, just Mark Cuban. Listen, Mark, we all love
Indiana
Shark Tank.
ties. Let's go.
Just make it happen. You don't like Wesley Matthews. I don't know if you guys read that Chandler Parsons, Mark Cuban bromance piece, but that was pretty hilarious. Just the fact
I've not read it, no. I'll
everyone
pass.
should go read that. Another major star I think could be traded. Well, not so much now, but I thought at the beginning of the season was Blake Griffin if the Clippers season started to fall apart. Other than that, I mean, unless someone made some sort of a Godfather offer to them
For Blake.
or to the Pacers or to a team, if the Pacers really fall off, I don't see anyone moving this year because of the fact that the Warriors and the Cavs and the Clippers kind of solidify themselves as the top teams. And it doesn't make any sense for a team to really move any pieces, especially because there's not a lot of old superstars if you think about it. I mean, Duncan's gone, Kobe's gone. That era is gone now. Most of the superstars in the NBA now are just reaching their prime or haven't even gotten close. So there's no real reason to trade a superstar without really knowing all that you have. I think the NBA is in a great position in that regard as far as they've got so many great young players and great young teams.
I do think the Kings are going to do something. Like
Cousins, that's the only one.
besides
I guess,
Cousins,
yeah.
I think maybe even Rudy Gay or
I
or
think
Cauley
they already-
Stein they've been talking about. Rudy Gay specifically said like he wants out, right?
Yeah, the Kings are a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. The Kings and 76ers are the only 2 teams I can see trading people.
Yeah.
Whether you get rid of Okafor
For picks, they just
or
rebuild.
Noel for
Yeah.
picks or giving to somebody, or you see DeMarcus Cousins or Rudy Gay. Like I've seen rumors for DeMarcus Cousins going to Boston.
Yeah. And I kind of feel bad. I mean, I think DeMarcus Cousins acts like a fool on the court a lot, but I kind of feel bad for him in the fact that he's had to play, I think it's 5 or 6 coaches. He's never had a good point guard. He
They
has
draft
losses now.
terribly.
They draft terribly. Divock doesn't know what he's doing. I think this is finally the year that something happens. Every year it's the same thing. Cousins is in talks, but that team, no one on that team is going to be there next year other than Aflalo, who signed a couple years on his deal. But the only other team I can think about is the Pelicans. I think Holiday might be moved. The way he's been
been
played
playing
1 or 2
great
games,
coming
he's played
back.
great games, and they have no reason to keep him because their team is absolute trash.
They're
So-
winning now though.
They're winning,
Are they gonna
but he's
sneak
on a
in?
great contract.
Yeah.
I think he has 1 more year on a great contract. That's the only reason that I could see him moving. But looking forward, Ross has some unique stats, 5x5. Ross, you want to explain?
I've been doing a lot more digging deeper into NBA stats, listening to podcasts, reading things like PER and Real Plus Minus, and I came across one that I've actually never heard of before. It's called 5x5. Have you guys ever heard of 5x5? A player recording a 5x5?
No, sir.
No, you haven't. It's kind of a unique stat. It's a player who scores 5 or more points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. And that's only been done 12 times since they recorded it in like 1974, started keeping track of blocks and steals.
Hear the 11 other than the one pacer?
Sure, I'll list the 11 who, yeah, one of them's a pacer. Jumped ahead. I'm going to see if they can guess who it is.
Sneak peek.
But the ones that are listed prior to the pacer, or also not the pacer, the Dr. J, George Johnson, I don't know who that one was, George Gervin, Hakeem, David Robinson, Derek Coleman, Vlade Divac, Kurlenko. He did it once. Marcus Camby, Nicholas Batum, and most recent was Draymond Green in 2015. But there was one Pacer.
I hate Draymond Green, by the way. I just want to make that note on the podcast.
No, we have to talk about that later, too. I agree with nut kicker Draymond
We need to have
Green.
a 5-minute just Draymond Green bash session.
So one Pacer, 2001. Who recorded the only...
2001?
2001. The only Pacer to record a 5x5. Who do you think it was?
He was on the Pacers roster 2001.
Was Rose gone?
Yeah, Rose was gone after that, right? Right after the finals, they got rid of Rose. Maybe he may have been there one more year, but it
So it's
wasn't
obviously not
Rose. It
the
wasn't
way
Rose.
You answered that question.
Wait.
Austin Crosher?
Nope.
Oh, that would have made me really mad. 2001.
The key is assists. You got to think assists.
Assists?
He had 15 assists.
Tinsley was on the team, was he?
Jamal Tinsley.
Jamal Tinsley.
12 points, 9 rebounds, 15 assists, 5 blocks,
guessed that.
6 steals.
Remember, like he was the first guy to wear his headband.
That was like
back
his-
during the middle of his head.
Wasn't
It
that
was
his
about to pop
second
off.
year? 2001, he was a rookie. Or was that his rookie year? Because he was...
I don't know. I don't even want to talk about.
I don't like
Jamal
talking about Tinsley. Anyway, I was shocked that there was actually Pacers. So I thought that was interesting. 5x5. I've never heard of it before. I'm going to try to do a
Ross
unique
is going to have
stat.
an awesome stat each
Once a week.
Get ready, Corner 3 show.
People are going
Yeah.
to be
The
educated.
Corner 3 Nation, get ready. It's
Yeah.
happening.
What are you talking about? 5x5?
It's like one of those
This whole
stats
week?
you take to a bar and you
Guess what?
Guess what? And you buys you a drink because they can't
Actually,
get it.
that's how Ross met his wife.
Oh,
He used that stat.
She actually doesn't drink, so it wasn't a bar. But yeah,
At Panera. That's how Ross met his
Panera
wife
bread.
at Panera.
Chipotle.
Hey,
Yeah,
Chipotle.
doing a Chipotle. That's all I got for that.
All right, let's do a quick Draymond Green session. 'Cause I think I just
Okay.
I can't stand a guy. I mean, we always hear about those players where, if you're on his team, you love him, and if you're not on his team, you hate him. I don't think anyone likes the guy. I follow him on Snapchat, and he just makes fun of all of his teammates, like the clothes they're wearing.
He got drunk at the parade for the
No, that
Warriors,
was
and
that
he-
was kind of
well,
cool.
he
though.
made fun of the other team. Like
But that
they
was-
suck.
No,
like,
that was awesome. though.
Really?
No, that was cool. I like that. I just don't like a guy who just continually nut bashes people.
keep your legs down. Good
Literally
Lord.
nut bashes people.
well, it's like he's like one of those guys that like will do the dirty plays, will do all this stuff, but as soon as you slap him or like fouls calling him, he cries like a little girl.
Yes, exactly. LeBron did that against the Pacers for the longest time. Remember, Danny Granger's on a fast break, and LeBron's on a fast break. Danny Granger kind of fouls him, just a little, like barely fouls
The
him.
head flail and the-
and LeBron just flails his elbow right into Danny Granger's face, and then acts like, "Whoa, man, what's your problem?" Those players are the worst to play with in pickup, in college, in the NBA, doesn't matter where. And Draymond Green is the epitome of the piss-off player who does that every time.
Yeah.
Can't stand that guy.
No, I don't like him.
All right,
I wouldn't want him on the
moving
team.
on.
Moving
I just
on.
want to say for the moment, I mean, hopefully we can have him on. Draymond, if you're listening, I know you're probably a big fan of the Corner 3 show. Come on the show, but we don't like you.
I'm afraid what he'll do when he finds the show, if he finds it ever. But whatever.
Get out. So TNT predictions: Boston versus Atlanta on Thursday. What do you think?
Let's see. So Boston's at home or Atlanta's home. I'm confused. Anyway,
Atlanta's home.
Atlanta's home. Boston's been playing good. They're 8-6, above 500. I think they went on that streak after they beat the Pacers.
Horford's back. Crowder's
Horford's
back.
back. Crowder's back. I like Boston in this game. I feel like they match up well with the Hawks, big man wise and guard wise.
I'm taking Boston as well for all
I'll
the
get
same
Boston
reasons.
too.
Oh,
Same
we're all going to
reasons.
go the same. Last week, we were all the same.
Corner
And
3 show.
yeah, this next game, I think we're all going to be the same too.
Lakers, Golden State. Is that Lakers, Golden State?
Yep.
Lakers at Golden State.
Lakers at
Golden State lost to Lakers early this season, as we all know. I think it was by at least 20. Golden State's not going to allow that to happen a second time, and I think they're going to do that in a very emphatic way. I take the Golden State by whatever the plus minus is. I'll take the over.
I agree. It's going to be kind of like the Pacers game. It'll be rough for the Laker fans.
I'm going to take the Warriors as well.
And
Sorry,
it's
Lakers.
just the worst. But one thing about the Lakers is interesting, though, with Golden State is their guards are big. Russell's 6'5", Clarkson's 6'5". Big guards kind of to push around Curry. Again, I don't know how they limited Durant to, I don't know what he had, but it's not make that big of an impact. But Lakers do have some interesting pieces as far as just in a matchup situation against the Warriors.
Yeah, so last week, Zach and I both went 3-4 in our picks. Alex, you're 4-3. You got one game on us. We all were in unison.
Yeah,
I think that was the Cavs difference.
Gotta
Zach,
believe,
you
man.
picked different than all of us, but it worked out.
Because I picked the Thunder, son.
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. The Pacers, we were kind of split on the Pacers game, so we'll see how next week goes with our selections.
Let's do a quick D-League update to our D-League aficionados.
There's probably like 5 of you who actually care about the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, but I was a season ticket holder for 5 years, so I thought I'd just drop a little bit of information on the Mad Ants. They're off to a 2-0 start. They're interesting for us because they're the Pacers' official affiliate this year, and Rakeem Christmas was called down from Fort Wayne to Indianapolis.
Called up.
He will, Fort Wayne to Indianapolis, it's down, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh my word!
Stop correcting me, Alex.
Jesus.
So Rakeem Christmas was called up. He will probably spend the entire season back in Fort Wayne because he is garbage. I think the first game in Fort Wayne, he had a plus minus of like negative 20 something. He was 1 for whatever.
Christmas
It was a bad game for him.
He was a D-League All-Star last year, okay? You're talking about a D-League All-Star.
I think that sums up the D-League right there, just that statement. But the other thing I wanted to mention then, 2 things. So the roster has players that we saw on the Summer League roster. So Poitras is there, Julian Stone, Zeisloft, Kristen Watford's actually there this year, former IU guy. So it's kind of fun to watch for the local fans if you're not.
We have an interesting team, actually. I mean, most D-League teams might recognize 1 or 2 names, but for Indiana fans,
Yeah, quite a few.
you got Zeisloft and Watford, and Julian Stone's a good player who was the last person to get cut off of the Pacers. They like him. And Poitras is a project. We haven't talked about him at all, but he's a Kentucky guy, All-American. If he would have came out his freshman year, he probably would have been drafted in the first round.
He reminds me like a Cauley Stein kind of a guy, right?
I mean, he's a little bit more bulkier. He's like 6'9", 6'10".
I mean, he's only got good on one side of the ball and's got to work on actually getting an offensive game.
He's got more of a basketball IQ, I'd say, than Cauley Stein, but he just doesn't have the talent yet.
Yeah. The only other player they had on the team was Ben Bentel. I don't know if fans remember at the end of the season, we signed him and then cut him immediately. That was so the Mad Ants would get his rights to play on the team. But he played in the first game and now signed overseas. So he'll be gone for 60 days. Most likely will come back to the Mad Ants once that contract's up. But players can make a lot more money going to Europe than playing in the D-League. It's, do you want to be here locally and visual, easy for NBA teams to see, or do you want to make money? That's pretty much what it comes down to. So quick little D-League update.
That's the D-League update featuring Ross Palva.
Superstar fan. Because we all care highly about them.
All right, so with basketball day in Indiana, we can talk a little about Hoosier Hysteria. And what Hoosier Hysteria means, basically, just someone who doesn't really know, just the love that Indiana has for basketball. I mean, high school basketball has been immortalized with the movie Hoosiers and, just its association with Indiana. I mean, you think about the barn house with the basket attached to the hoop. But, I mean, it's real. I've experienced it playing in high school, and it's gone away in the fact that not every Friday night, every small town is completely empty and everyone's at the game. But during my high school career, I remember we went down to Seymour, and I think Seymour holds around 7,500 people. And I remember I walked in, it was Yogi's junior year, and I couldn't hear myself talk. I mean, Ross, for those listening, Ross and Zach and I were about 2 or 3 feet apart right now. And Yogi always tells us what we're going to do in the warm-up line. And I couldn't hear him say we're going to do right-handed layups. It was that loud. And it was those moments that make Indiana basketball pretty special. And that's why basketball day in Indiana might sound a little cheesy to someone who's outside of it. But it's going to be a pretty cool day. And it's great that FS Indiana is doing it.
Yeah, you're referencing the article, The Crossroads of Hoosier Hysteria from The Ringer. Mark Titus, you mentioned a little bit about him earlier. I like his first opening quote. Basketball really had its origin in Indiana, which remains the center of the sport. James Naismith, yeah. Awesome. The founder, creator kind of basketball. So I didn't play, like you mentioned, basketball. Neither did Zach, I don't think. So we can't relate to you being in the stadium. But I understand what you're saying. I mean, movie Hoosiers, Friday night, our family, we weren't going to go to a basketball game. So maybe it is kind of dwindling a little bit, the Hoosier hysteria, but also the influence of, internet and things. Little towns have something to do instead of going to watch a basketball game.
There's still a big difference, though. Like, I grew up in Ohio. Ohio is a football state.
Yeah.
Clearly. So when I moved somewhere over here, like Indiana, senior year, you notice the difference. It's clearly a basketball state. The main focus is basketball, not football. Everybody's going to go to the basketball game. You might say, yeah, it's dwindled a little bit. Yeah, it's dwindled, but yeah, it's still bigger than you see it in
Any
other
other
states.
place. I agree. I mean, you can't just relate, how many NBA guys that come from a certain state to the basketball love. I mean, you see it when Butler went to the national championship. You saw it every time IU wins a freaking game.
The
IU
Kentucky shot.
Hoosier Nation goes nuts. I mean, Purdue's always had a great fan base, but it is something really, really, really special, and you see it in certain places. Bob Knight said, and I'm quoting again the Ringer article, "The Crossroads of Hoosier Hysteria." Bob Knight said, "An Indiana player has the enthusiasm of an evangelist, the discipline of a monk, and the heart of a warrior who never loses the honesty and character of a small boy." Now, Bob Knight has since gone on to say and do some pretty crazy things, but I think the point is still true in the fact that there's just a love for basketball in Indiana, and it's still alive. And it's just such a cool place to see it. You kind of get that feel just from walking around Baker's Life. Um, the stuff on the wall, the fact that we have Hickory Night, like no other team has
Yep.
anything like that. As far as a movie that kind of unites all Hoosiers together, even people who moved here. To see a bunch of grown men wearing those gold shorts looks pretty ridiculous to someone else, but to us, it's the coolest thing. I remember I went to the first Hickory game last year against the Heat. It was on ESPN, and I got chills just watching that intro. Watching
love
the
that
Hoosier player
intro.
clap
The slow clap, the build
just
up.
like
Yeah.
the Hickory. I mean, it was surreal, and I think that's why Hoosier Hysteria is still alive. It's not the same; it'll never be the same. We're in a different era of basketball, but it's still something pretty darn special.
Yeah, so we highly recommend you go out and read that article if you have a couple minutes to read through. It's very interesting. It goes through things like in '97 when they changed
Class
to the class basketball. That's a whole other topic for another time.
Now I'll tell you, being in that situation. So when I was at Park Tudor, we only won in 2A. Now they're 3A because of the success factor. But players talk about that. I remember hearing about Trey Lyles and Blackman. Well, Trey Lyles and Tech were really highly rated. They went on to win the 4A state championship. But as Park Tudor, we felt we could compete with anyone.
So they wish they was back
Oh
to the
man,
single.
we would have done anything to play in that. Well, we would have done anything at least to play in 4A and play against
prove
the
that
big
you
boys,
belong,
to prove
yeah.
that we could have beaten. We lost to Tech in an overtime game. That was one of the best games I've ever been a part of. I played the worst game I've ever played in my life, and I'll regret it to this day. But I think that feeling of still wanting to do something like that, where it all comes together, is still there. But again, small schools want their own championships, and I understand it to some degree. It'll never be the same, but still Hoosier Hysteria, again, like we talked about, is still alive and well. The corner three for this week, Ross picked it out. It's the top color commentators, regardless college or NBA. So top college basketball or top basketball color commentators.
Or play-by-play.
Or play-by-play.
Either or. You want to go first? You had it written down here first.
Oh, I just chose all color guys because I think play-by-play is great, but I think color is extremely hard to do as far as being knowledgeable but not sounding robotic. I got Jeff Van Gundy is the most honest color commentator. He just says exactly what's on his mind. He calls out guys that are playing 10 feet ahead of him. I just love the way he goes through a game. Jay Billis on the college end. First of all, I'm in favor of college players getting paid, so usually he brings that out in each and every broadcast. But he played in Duke, obviously, and he stays around the game so much, and he just knows what he's talking about. And then I got Slick in there, and I'll have Slick and Quinn together. I think they honestly do a great job. If you go on the Pacers Reddit, I think they're always fans from other teams who come in and say, man, if I was just listening to your broadcast, other than some of the graphics, I wouldn't really know that your color commentators or your commentating crew are Pacers affiliates, because Quinn just tells it like it is. When the Pacers get away with something, he says we got away with it. When we fouled someone, we didn't get called, he calls us out. He knows the game too, and I can't tell you how many times CJ Miles or any other player will take a shot and Quinn will go short left, like while the ball's in the air. And Quinn was not, and I repeat, not, and he knows this, not a very good shooter during his career, but just his basketball knowledge is so evident in how he speaks, and Denary is great complimenting Quinn, and Slick just boom, baby, it's all you need to hear.
I'd probably go counting down Van Gundy. Actually, Marv Albert. than Van Gundy because, like you said, I like Van Gundy's honesty. I like how he just calls people out.
He always wants to change rules. I like when he talks that
And then
stuff.
my favorite, even though there's some people out there that don't like him, but I feel like he makes the NCAA tournament, is Gus Johnson.
Oh, yes.
Whenever that small school hits that buzzer beater, he's usually at the game and he calls it and it gives you goosebumps. So Gus Johnson would be my favorite out of all those three.
He seems to be doing more football, if I'm not mistaken. He's on
Fox
the
Sports
CBS.
signing that big deal.
That's right. He's not on the college basketball anymore. I do miss Gus Johnson. Yeah. If I had to pick color guys, I would go Slick as well. Slick. I never had cable growing up, so I'd always listen to the Pacers games on the radio, and Boom Baby is in my head. I've listened to him since I was little. Bill Rafferty is one of my favorite ones. He's ridiculous.
Onions!
Nylon, pure, ridiculous, but you remember that voice. And I enjoy Brent Barry on his little puns and stuff during the games on the TNT games.
I'm not a big Brent Barry.
No.
I'm sorry.
I like his stuff. And then if we're going to do play-by-play, Gus Johnson, Mark Boyle, same reason for Slick, and Marv Albert brings me back Reggie Miller memories.
Kevin Harlan's voice is
Pretty iconic as well,
Pretty
yeah.
epic.
Mark Boyle, I just think of the Knicks, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, or when Reggie hits the half-court shot for against the Nets, and he hit it. I can hear Boyle's voice in my head.
Ross is crying right now for
It's very
everyone who's
emotional.
just listening.
Ah,
I
memories.
I think I lamented too much on the fact that Quinn couldn't shoot. Quinn was a great player, an NBA champion. Quinn, I'm sorry.
Quinn,
Don't beat him up.
we'll see Alex tomorrow at
And
work,
I'm sorry.
and he will kill him.
But I think that wraps it up for us on our third episode. So thanks for joining us. And Ross, where can they follow us at?
You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and at Twitter at the Corner 3 Show. And then our
Color
individual-
3 Show just gained like 1 million subscribers.
There is
thanks
no.
to Ross.
I googled it, but we each have our own individual Twitter handles. It's the Corner 3.
Yeah, one job.
Zach, Alex, Ross. You can find us there.
And please subscribe to us. We are on Google Play, we are on SoundCloud and iTunes. Please leave a review as well, and also hit that subscribe button on
Hit the
YouTube.
subscribe button, people.
Leave a review. We had a bunch of reviews pop up last night. We should read them at one of our.
We should.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Peace.